Wonderful. All right, great. My name is Sally Shaughnessy, and I'll be facilitating today's discussion of Intercept, the open source solution for events management. As Joe mentioned, I'm joined by our friends from Richland County Library, the Reaching Across Illinois Library System, otherwise known here forth as RAILS, and Camden County Library System. Each organization has their own unique experience with Intercept, and we are so excited to hear from them about their journeys. So personally, I have had the distinct pleasure of partnering with Richland County Library in their project, in their website redesign and the build and launch of Intercept. So this solution is near and dear to my heart. So thanks everybody for being here today. Before we dive in, another quick little question for you all. We'd love to hear where you're coming from today. So we'd love to hear, what kind of organization are you with? Are you a library system, or are you here to see how Intercept might work for your non-library events management needs? Wonderful. All right, next, do you have a lot of events to manage? Are you a library managing 80,000 constituents and 20,000 events per year? That'd be a lot. Wonderful. And then lastly, are you using an off-the-shelf events management platform right now, like Evanced or Communico? Wonderful, thank you. Last question. Great. All right. So now that we know all about you all, you're here to learn more about Intercept. So what is Intercept? Intercept is an open source events management system. It's unique in that there's a community growing behind it, listening to users and other organizations, and we're adding new features and enhancements every month. It was originally built for libraries, but really it can be adopted by any organization that manages events or needs room reservation systems. Intercept is built on Drupal, and there's a suite of modules that any organization can install and customize. For organizations not on Drupal, we have a version of Intercept available for you all as well, for those WordPress users or those other CMS system users. It's via an upstream with the hosting provider Pantheon. Some of the many attractive features of the product include events calendar management, participant registration, scanning attendance at events, participant feedback and reporting functionalities, event recommendations based on behaviors, and room reservations. So each organization here with me today, like I said, they have their own unique needs, and Intercept has met those needs to streamline and improve their events management. Whether it's inviting 80 contributing sponsors to submit events via the Rails statewide calendar, handling multiple event sponsors, limiting event access permissions, or pivoting, don't we all know this, pivoting to handle video conference or remote events or hybrid events, adding badges, building API integrations with other apps like Camden County system has, or making sure that event recommendations are tailored to user behavior, so that we're making smarter recommendations and allowing those recommendations to show up in a user's account dashboard like Richland has. The Intercept suite of modules is a great open source solution to start with and make your own. So before we dig into hearing from each of the library partners here, I'd love to go back to the beginning of Intercept. So Aten was approached by Sarah Sawicki and the team at Richland County Library back in 2017. They were tired of Evanced, a popular events management tool. It just wasn't delivering the features they needed to continue to innovate, to engage their members, or to collect the data that they needed. Nothing else in the marketplace would either. So being the bold innovators that they are, they decided to embark on building a solution that would actually meet their needs. But being good community citizens as well, they couldn't keep this for themselves. So the idea of Intercept, the open source solution for all, was born. Richland had already done a ton of research and had a backlog of features they wanted when they went on the search for the right partner. Aten was fortunate enough to be selected as that partner. We came in and we validated their backlog and their work. We enhanced their backlog, and we crafted a user-centered interface, and we developed a powerful product, which we maintain and iterate on together to this day. The Intercept community is now growing. The software is available for free to organizations via Drupal or a Pantheon upstream for a small hosting fee. Since we launched the Richland site, 15 organizations have installed and are working with Intercept. There's a lot of momentum behind this. We're joined today by 2 other organizations that have their own unique Intercept journeys. And together, we're reaching beyond libraries to showcase the features of Intercept for any group that needs to manage events or manage rooms and demonstrate the flexibility that you have to start with a great foundation and build to suit your needs. So first, I'd love to invite Sarah Sawicki from Richland to tell us how they came to build and use Intercept for their needs. Sarah, take it away.
Thank you, Sally. Well, hey y'all, I do appreciate the opportunity to come before you and talk to you about my 4th child. I have 3 human children and then Intercept basically. So I do appreciate it. We've been working on this for quite a few years now. I am the senior project manager at Richland Library, and my team oversees all of the strategic plan projects that arise out of the strategic plan. In 2014, I came to be on a team that was didn't have a name yet, but it was tasked with the following: develop a formal way of learning preferences of individual customers, design communications and programs that resonate with them, and say thank you. And so we created and piloted low and high tech programs to gather program attendance data about individuals, and then assess the results of those programs. And that's kind of how it was formed. It was just an idea. It was, how can we do this? And the name, by the way, several people have asked me. So the name comes from the last letters stand for customer engagement and participation tracking. So engaged customers, tracking what they're doing, giving them more of what they love is where we came to be. Our original team and goal was to reward customers for coming to programs, but we realized we didn't know who was coming to programs, right? We know as a library the things that people are checking out, but we don't know who is there at our programs. We don't require any sort of, most of the time, especially before COVID, most programs don't require registration. They're open to anyone. You don't even have to have a library card. So we wanted to be able to scan customers at programs so we could thank them for their patronage and reward them. We did some customer interviews, and as we say in the South, come to find out, customers already love us. They don't really need a reward for using the library, but what they do want is more of what they love. And if you are from a library, you know that you've stood at the front desk before and somebody will have missed a program and they say, oh gosh, I wish I'd known about that. Well, this was our answer for that. We want to be able to give them more what they love. So we built a low-tech prototype to scan customers in at events. It worked, but it was cumbersome. It wasn't integrated. It was just an exported spreadsheet trying to match it up with Polaris, which is our ILS. And that was always the goal, is to tie this attendance to the ILS. An ILS, if you're not from libraries, is Integrated Library Systems that manages the content of the materials and also the borrowing of the people. Not borrowing of the people, that didn't sound right. The customer database. All right, so, but then our boss, who is pretty much a badass, worked with us and worked with the Knight Foundation to get us a $250,000 grant to build this idea out, which was that connector, the building, connecting customers' program attendance to the ILS. So, like the good government entity that we are, we went through a thorough RFP process and found Aten. We interviewed a lot of firms and looked at a lot of presentations, and Aten, they were really the only ones who, y'all were really the only ones who understood what we were trying to do. We felt like you had the technical chops to make it happen and also to make it look beautiful. And so that was really, y'all were the unicorn with what we were trying to do. So we are so appreciative of our Aten family. Again, initially we thought we were building a connector between the ILS, Polaris, the catalog, and the customer database, and Evanced, which was what we were using as a calendar system at the time. We weren't in love with Evanced because, well, look at it, right? Like it was okay. I will tell you, this also is when we were in our Miami Vice colors a while back. So this is what we were using to display events and room reservations to customers. You know, it's not great. It also included room reservations. So this is a picture of room reservations. This is what the event calendar looked like. Again, this was before rebranding. It wasn't great. So we were building this band-aid between a bad calendar system and our ILS. And we were like, you know what, we should just build a calendar too. It'll be easy peasy, right? So it was not. But so we were able to blend all of these functions that a library really needs: room reservation, a calendar to show to the customers, an event management system, and that bonus of being able to scan in customers. And so this is what it looks like today. It's much more sleek, simple, and it has features that that we never had before. So that is how Intercept came to be born.
Sarah, thank you so much. You all are true innovators, and that was a bold decision to back away from an off-the-shelf solution that was really, really popular. But look at where we are today. Today, we're not only partnering with Richland, but we're also partnering with the Rails system. And I'm so excited to bring Brian from Rails to the virtual stage right now, if you will, to tell us a little bit about Rails and the Rails L2 project. Brian.
Thank you. My name is Brian Smith. I'm the web developer at the Reaching Across Illinois Library System, or Rails. And we are called that because if you give librarians the opportunity to name something, it does need to form an acronym. So we are Rails, and Intercept is an important part of a website we have called the Library Directory and Learning Calendar, or L2. And Rails is one of two large regional library systems in the state of Illinois. Our service area is the northern and west central part of the state. We're funded through grants from the Illinois State Library, and we have multi-type membership. We serve libraries of all types: public libraries, academic, school, and specialized libraries. And we provide services to our member libraries, including interlibrary delivery, shared catalog support, continuing education, and more. L2, the Library Directory and Learning Calendar, the current site replaced a .NET website, which was more than 10 years old and very much needed to be replaced. The current L2 launched in September of 2020. L2 functions as a directory of libraries and some library adjacent organizations. And it's also, and this is where Intercept comes in, a calendar of events for library personnel, trainings, meetings, etc. We're not a library, we're an organization that supports libraries. And so the events in our calendar are not really aimed at the general public, but directed at library personnel. It is a statewide system. L2 is, so it's not just covering Rails, but the entire state of Illinois. And L2 was developed and continues to be developed and maintained through grants from the Illinois State Library. And the web address is librarylearning.org. And if you go to librarylearning.org, you'll come to see L2, and you'll see how both the events and the directory are important aspects of the site. The directory environment on L2 influences greatly the needs of the calendar. Within the L2 directory, we have the Illinois State Library, the three library systems, which are the two large regional library systems, plus Chicago Public Library, which is its own thing. There are 8 catalog consortia, and there are the membership of the library systems include about 1,800 library agencies with about 5,000 locations. And these entities are all related in some way. The library systems are funded by the state library. Most of the catalog consortia operate with some support from the library systems. Each library agency is a member of a library system, and each library location can be a member of a catalog consortium. And the users of the L2 site are affiliated with these entities, and they inherit relationships. For example, a user who is a staff member at a library that belongs to Rails also carries through an affiliation with Rails, a relationship with Rails. So we do have some peculiar calendar needs for the L2 project. One thing we definitely needed was to be able to support multi-location events. That would be video conferences, which would have one main in-person location, but also be simultaneous in-person locations elsewhere through video conferencing, and also in-person and online hybrid events. And each of those locations on the event needs to have its own registration capacity. We also needed the calendar to allow events to be co-sponsored. For example, the Illinois State Library and Rails and our sibling system, Illinois Heartland Library System, may be jointly sponsoring an event, and that needed to be reflected in the calendar. We also need to be able to restrict viewing and registration for any event based on the user's relationship with the sponsor. An example of this is a catalog consortium may have a training event going on that they need to make available only to people who work at their member libraries. And as far as management of events goes, we need to restrict that access to users who are directly affiliated with the sponsors. So we want Rails employees who have sufficient permissions to be able to manage Rails events, but we're not able to manage the Illinois State Library's events. And one other thing we needed was to have event locations that were not a permanent part of the inventory, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. We did learn about Intercept at DrupalCon in Seattle in 2019, and later in the year awarded the contract on the L2 project to Aten through our RFP process. Things that were very attractive about Intercept to us were that it is open source, which we did require in our RFP. One of the vendors that we sent the RFP to did reply to us saying they would not be submitting a proposal just because they did not want their calendar system to be made into an open source project. We also like that Intercept is built on Drupal, which we've been working with for a number of years. Our main Rails website is on Drupal, and websites for several other our projects are. We really like that Drupal is extensible, that if it doesn't do exactly what you need, an add-on module can be built to do what you want. And also the API aspects of Drupal, which not only facilitate that extensibility, but also makes it possible for the data from the Drupal website to be used by external websites. And Intercept also has several other specific features we need in a calendar. First of all, we needed to have room reservation time independent of the event time. If we have a meeting that's from 1 p.m. until 2 p.m., we want the event to show up in the calendar as being from 1 to 2, but we need an extra half hour before and after the event for setup and teardown. We also needed to make it possible for the sponsors to be able to register users for their events, which we do need to do on occasion. We like that Intercept has a built-in attendance function and as well as an evaluation function. And something else that we also needed that Intercept provides is the provision of event templates. So if we have an event, say a meeting, which happens monthly, it doesn't necessarily recur the same time every month on a pattern, but is essentially going to be the same every month other than the date and time, we can very easily create a new event off of an existing one. We did, however, need to do some quite heavy customizations on Intercept. A lot of this has to do with those relationships that I mentioned earlier between users and the sponsor organizations. We did need to customize the access permissions, which was probably the bulk of the customization work that we had done. So we needed to customize things so that only the sponsor is able to manage their own events. We also needed to customize the access to users being able to view and register for events based on their relationship with the event sponsor. Additionally, we needed to have several different types of locations available for events. Out of the box from Intercept, we can have a physical location with a reservable room. We also need to have ad hoc physical locations. There may be a meeting or a continuing education event that is held at a conference center somewhere, and that location is really not going to be used for any other events ever, or perhaps rarely. So we really didn't want that to be part of that the inventory of physical locations. And we also needed to allow for a variety of online locations, not only Zoom, but GoTo and other online venues. Finally, we also needed to allow multiple locations per event. As I mentioned before, we have a number of events that are held as video conferences or as hybrid events. And each of those locations on an event has to have its own registration capacity. So when a user is registering for an event, they do need to select the location where they will be attending at.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's really exciting to hear how you knew that you would need to customize it, but you knew that Drupal and that Intercept would allow you to start not from square one, but maybe from squares 2 or 3. And by forking Intercept and customizing it where you needed to, you've really developed a powerful tool for Rails. I'm really excited to hear a little bit more and talk a little bit more in the Q&A section about contributing Rails features back to the Drupal suite of modules so that everybody can take advantage of these really wonderful options you've added. So thank you again. And last but not least, I would love to invite Lisa and Chris from Camden County Library System to tell us about their experience using Intercept. You are one of the newest users of Intercept. You have also used in-house resources with Chris and made good on some opportunities that work from home and COVID shutdowns have provided so that you've really explored and customized Intercept for yourself. So please, Lisa and Chris, take it away.
Hello, and thank you so much for having us here today. So to start, we decided actually on Intercept because it was a low-cost solution to meet our needs. Purchasing as a accounting agency is incredibly complicated. We don't have a credit card. We work off of a voucher system. We have to have all vendors approved or work through a reseller, which actually increases cost. They have to complete a lot of paperwork in advance. I have to request a quote and prepare an RFP at times, and then submit a purchase requisition and send it for approval for the county and then the library commission. So overall, this process can take a minimum of at least 1 month, and it's usually longer. We really didn't have that kind of time because of our current program was extremely unstable. So we actually ended up introducing this to our staff through a series of roundtables, and we did some testing with them. And we then introduced it to our branch managers who then in turn trained their staff. We're still making adjustments, but overall our process has gone relatively smoothly and has been a positive welcome. We began to look at the event calendar replacements in 2019. The Camden County Library System had been using Events for programs, equipment, and room reservations since about 2009 or 2010. Much like Richland, we were using Events, but we were actually happy with the product overall. Unfortunately, it was slated for end of life, and for years actually had been slated for end of life, and had not been really supported or updated since at least 2017. So we knew we were on borrowed time, and it started looking at solutions in the summer of 2019, which included Intercept. However, the fall brought a lot of changes to the IT department. We were down by 2 positions, one of which was including the department head. Additionally, several branches were under renovations, including some major planned and unplanned ones here at our main branch. Regardless, by early 2020, we had demoed new calendar systems from a handful of companies, but we found none of them gave us everything we wanted and were extremely expensive. We met and discussed with the Intercept folks from Richland and Aten the Friday before we implemented quarantine lockdown procedures. Talk about fate. We are a public service institution, and as a result, we are not prepared for remote work. But we were forced to face that very scenario. IT's focus during the rest of 2020 was providing remote access to work resources, implementing new software, and deploying take-home equipment for staff in need. Migrating to a new calendar took a backseat to all of this, which was fine since the library wasn't open or offering any programs. But of course, as new tools became available for our librarians, virtual programming was born, and they needed a way to schedule and share events with our patrons. So of course, we Band-Aid and configured Events to allow for virtual programming, but we were starting to experience a lot of problems with this aging software. During this remote work, Chris started up a VM and began working on Intercept more intently, betting that this was eventually the direction we were going to go to for a calendar replacement. And I'm sure he wishes he had placed money on that bet. We liked Intercept when we had originally looked at it. We were impressed with how it worked and how it was designed, and all the unexpected expenses from addressing COVID-19 made using an open source solution even more attractive. Chris did run into a few hiccups trying to get Intercept going. This actually ended up being a great opportunity and time for him to learn Composer better, but also found he received a lot of great help from the community. Even though we tried to reopen branches to the public in the fall of 2020, we didn't plan on offering indoor programs, so we continued to ignore the Events problem and focus on creating new services such as curbside pickup. Of course, we knew that we had to start planning to discontinue Events sometime in 2021. And of course, before the start of our summer reading program started, because this 3-month-long program hosts a large number of events. Additionally, I thought that because we were only offering virtual and outdoor events, the cutover would be easier than when we would be hosting more event types at more locations. Since we were already using open source products, we were comfortable with hosting Intercept ourselves. We also saw this as a great opportunity to redesign our event structure. The staff who originally designed our Events environment no longer worked at the library, and it was a very convoluted setup. I had configured Events at one of my previous libraries and knew that it could have been more streamlined, but was afraid to mess with it because it was so fragile. Moving to Intercept gave us the chance to redesign the structure and tighten up staff access. One of the first things we tweaked on Intercept was the event filter. We loved having it, but wanted to not only make it collapsible, but collapsed by default. That way, when patrons visited the site, they would see more of the events listed without having to scroll. It's especially great when viewing the site on a mobile device where screen real estate is obviously much smaller. Likewise, we made some tweaks to the image sizing when viewing an event so that the event description and registration information would be further up on the screen. We had a checklist of important features we were looking for in an event program. Number 1 on that list was color coding. Unlike Richland, who seemed to stay with a certain color style, we actually were familiar with doing a lot of color coding on our calendars. And so we were a little bummed that we couldn't do that in Intercept. We started thinking about different ways to achieve the end goal of color coding, being able to tell what age group events were for at a glance. Through a few different permeations, we arrived at two different ideas: that we could use some letter codes before the title to represent each age group, and then create stock images, which we first intended to color code, but then decided to add black and white badges with unique shapes for each age group so that we increased accessibility with high contrast images rather than colors. We soon realized that this created a need for a different stock photo for every age and event type combination, and that staff would have to consistently add badges to the correct place with the right dimensions on images for their events. This would also flood our server with superfluous content. Given, however, that we were already planning to use letter codes in the titles, we decided to programmatically add badge overlays onto the images, which solved both issues. Of course, nothing gets in our way here, so we applied the same kind of logic to color coding the events on the calendar view. The colors we chose came from our county branding guide, ultimately making the calendar even more our own. So we ended up with 3 different ways that someone could quickly know what age group an event was for, thus providing increased accessibility for patrons with limited literacy or those who have vision issues such as color blindness or poor eyesight. At this point, I'd like to thank all of my team who worked so hard to help us complete this project. They helped train staff, offered support for staff as we went live, copied over all of our content, and provided advice and insight. And I'd especially like to thank my web services librarian, Maureen Wincoop, who worked closely with Chris and me. She was pivotal with our quality assurance testing and created some great solutions for our workflow for some of the unique programming needs. Lastly, I cannot emphasize enough that none of this could have been done without the hard work and ingenuity of Chris Sloan, who turned all of my annoying requests and silly questions into what you see today. I'd like to hand it over to him so he can tell you a little bit more about where we are now and what else we have planned. But first, I'd like to thank him profusely for all of his hard work on this project. Chris?
Thank you, Lisa. So I think, as Lisa said, we started using Intercept here in May, and after everything kind of settled, we got rolling along with it, we realized that one of the other projects that we've been working on, which was a new app, was going to be able to take advantage of Intercept. So Drupal core and Drupal 8 and above have the API built into it, and Intercept has endpoints for that. And we were able to take advantage of that in order to be able to quickly add a events tab to our app and just be able to pull in that list of events there. We looked at alternate methods. RSS wasn't really giving us what we wanted with that, but the API really made that very easy to tailor it to what we needed. Intercept is very mobile friendly by default. So what we were able to do is just pull in that list of events, have it open a web view when someone clicks on that, and they're able to go through, register for the event, sign in, do whatever they need to without really even leaving the app if they don't want to. We're also kind of looking at other endpoints in Intercept to be able to use in some of our future projects. We've got a website redesign coming along, and Intercept has the different locations that you can add to it, and we're looking at integrating that in with the other sites so that we can really just have a centralized place to store that information and not have to duplicate that on other sites, and just make it something where anywhere where a patron might find that information is going to be the same. So we're really excited about those possibilities.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Lisa and Chris. We are thrilled to have you as part of the Intercept family now. We're excited to continue to collaborate and hear about your roadmap and the features, and connect with Rails and Richland and figure out how we can continue to contribute all these wonderful features back into Drupal.org so that we can allow and empower other organizations to take advantage of this wonderful solution.